in order to make their counteroffensive more efficient and effective, Ukrainian forces have changed the way they're using drones on the battlefield. We're going to break down exactly what they're doing, what they're looking for, and how it fits into the larger strategy of their offensive. Let's get into it. All right, this comes to us from The Sun via Reuters. So you notice they've got this it looks like fishing line here, and I think that's probably being pulled by a truck or some other vehicle in order to get this to launch. And one of the things I think is so fascinating about drones in this conflict is how much they've evolved in the 10 or really 12 years since I was in Afghanistan. When I was in, drones were seen as a substitute for aircraft. They were large. They had very elaborately planned flight missions. Deconflicting airspace was a huge deal. It was a very involved process to get a drone on station. In contrast, you're seeing here, this is an extremely low-level unit. And I don't mean that in a patronizing or condescending way. I mean, this is a mission that's organized by what looks like a squad or fire team. Likely at the behest of a platoon commander or company commander, right? So the idea of drones as being aircraft that are sort of integrated at this battalion level is just no longer the case, right? Now you're seeing drones integrated on the company level, right? And they're smaller, they have less range, but they, in many ways, are more effective on the battlefield because there's simply more of them.
Можно.
That's interesting. Do you see that launch mechanism? It's not. It's a spring. This is basically a bungee cord. It must be anchored to the ground so that it gets a little bit of momentum and the prop turns on. That's fascinating. Okay, you can see here, this is like the team. You've got people launching. What I also think is interesting is, look at this symbol. This is Ukrainian armed forces, but then this is the flag of the country of Poland. So this may be a Polish drone unit.
Зараз ми здійснюємо політ на південний схід в сторону Бахмуту.
So I want to point out again their command post. This is such a classic field expeditionary environment. I love the fact that, again, this is so much better than what we had in Afghanistan. Not that the US's shadow drones weren't better. It performed better in every way, right? They had a higher altitude, longer loiter time. They had likely better sensors, but there were like 10 in the entire eastern part of Afghanistan, right? There were so few drones running missions, and it was so hard to get priority to get those missions that this idea that you've taken these drones and you've pushed them down to the point where, when we had drones, they were flown, observed, right? Missions were dictated at a battalion headquarters, right? A large base with so many staff. And, you literally, when I wanted a drone mission, I'm not making this up. It had so many levels of review it had to go through. I had to get approval from the unit chaplain to make sure that I wasn't going to accidentally be religiously disrespectful with a drone. An unarmed drone in a war zone. I needed to make sure I was following. I wasn't going to. I don't know how you could. Maybe if I was going to be spelling out Hail Satan or something in the sky, but even then nobody would know because it's in English. It was preposterous. It's like the military. It's like so many people just needed jobs when they were deployed. It's like ridiculous. And then you look at this, and no chaplain, no 6 levels of staff review. These guys launching the drone, right, in a Toyota pickup with a camo netting over it, and they are watching their reconnaissance data. So they're going towards Bakhmut, conducting reconnaissance.
Робота в нашому виконанні у разі виявлення цікавих цілей.
And you can see these guys are probably part of an artillery unit, right? So let's take a look at where they're operating. So here is Southeast Bakhmut. This video is from 10 days ago, or this is from the 10th. This is released today. So I would suspect they probably released it 36 or 48 hours ago. So I imagine that you may be seeing it like here. You can see this is a Russian trench structure that's been, carved out. So I suspect that they're probably operating somewhere in this facility, trying to detect and eliminate targets. But this is almost certainly where they're at. And you can see just from the terrain how beneficial it is, right? There's a lot of forested area, but then behind that is likely a lot of Russian logistics and rear area, not rear area, but like Russian logistics and staging areas that are rife with targets.
Наші гармаші виконуватимуть вогневу роботу по ураженню цих цілей, а ми будемо давати їм.
Right. This is something else that the U.S. in 2010, 2011 was just starting to pioneer. They just started to have Air Force combat controllers who would let you, the field commander, the actual guy, the commander of the forces on the ground, actually see what the drone saw. They had basically a Game Boy or a small iPad where you could watch the drone feed. But the idea that these guys can, from this laptop, which again, it's just like an Acer laptop, that they are going to send it to their artillery fire direction center, who are then going to use it to adjust fire. This is cut out. This is normally, by the way, observing fire and adjusting it and then reporting it to the fire direction center. This is an entire military specialty. This is a FISTER, or I don't know what it stands for, Fire Support Team. The point is there's a whole dedicated military role for this job that's just been replaced by computers. We're watching in real time FISTers get replaced by computers.
Картинку для того, щоб вони могли коригувати свою стрільбу, відповідно робити її ефективніше.
So actually we know this is like the city of Bakhmut, right? These buildings, we know this.
Є скрини конкретно в тому місці, про яке ти кажеш.
I mean, this is also just an incredible level of like field sophistication. And you can see that they've got all these laptops up. They likely have some sort of Wi-Fi, or they may be even using the Starlink system to continually create this like information linked battlefield. And what kills me is that the US was talking about building a battlefield that looks like this in like the 90s. But the US is so dominated, I believe, by profit-seeking contractors, by generals and senior officers who struggle to implement a real vision. I think this was someone's vision for the battlefield, but they were almost certainly crushed by the bureaucratic system. But when it's an existential struggle of life and death, and you're in a country whose military's first priority isn't necessarily funneling tax dollars to Lockheed Martin, but instead to make systems that work, you can see a couple of Acer laptops, a password-protected network, and a really good commercial off-the-shelf system for sharing live video feeds is tremendously effective, right? This is, and it's just sort of always kills me when it's like the way civilian technology works, especially in the United States, where like we are the best country in the world at building civilian technologies, and then you look at the absolute garbage that our military often uses in its, especially in its information sector, right? Like, look at how many, like despite the fact that I had an iPhone, right, or a simple iPhone, I couldn't get an iPhone or a GPS system. If I bought a commercial off the shelf one, it was infinitely better than the military issued GPS systems and maps. Infinitely. It's like ridiculous.
Наразі ми літаємо щодня, повністю використовуємо весь ресурс, який у нас є. І до початку контрнаступу у нас була доволі висока інтенсивність роботи, тому особисто для нашого екіпажу нічого не змінилося. Ми продовжуємо працювати щодня.
Бачиш, ми вже без стрільби їх знищуємо.
Якщо ми підтверджуємо наявність техніки, ми передаємо це в пункт управління артилерійського вогню, і вони приймають рішення, чи готові вони, і чи є у них технічні.
I mean, this is just, guys, it's hard to understand. Like 11, 12 years ago, this was like sci-fi fantasy, like truly. From a military perspective, the ability to pop open a laptop, throw a drone at something, and then feed it directly to a fire direction center who's going to decide. They already have the grid coordinate. They have the target disposition. They can see it. It's wild, dude. It's wild that this sci-fi level stuff, this isn't the U.S. military. This isn't a first world country military. This is being done by a military that is notorious, right? This is the military of a country, one of the most impoverished countries in Europe.
Засоби уражати цю техніку наразі. Якщо є, то ми почнемо коригування вогню.
And it's just a reminder that, again, once you are in a situation where you wash away assumptions as a military, you can really, and you ask yourself, what is going to actually work? Because here's the thing, guys. Because Ukraine sat there and said, all right, we don't need to worry about a theoretical enemy, right? The U.S., because here's what the U.S. would say. If I was like, hey, we should buy some laptops and get a commercial account and feed video data, they would go, well, that's not very cybersecurity of you. What if the Chinese super hackers hack it with the AI buzzwords? And I'd be like, well, does the Chinese military today, are they going to access this system? And do they have the capacity to access, if they had this video feed, would they have the capacity to get it to the people who need to know about it in time to stop it, right? In this case, but the Ukrainians don't have that constraint. They have the actual Russian military in their country. So they don't need to sit there and go, is it theoretically secure? It is secure. It's secure enough because they know that the Russian military isn't organized enough to hack this feed, communicate to the units that are under threat, that they need to address the threat, right? They just move faster. And what the US fails to realize is that this video feed, if you get it tomorrow, 48 hours might as well be 48 years. You know what I mean?
Да, це Бахмут.
In fact, we could see 7, 6, right? So we'll see. Let's take a look. Let's take a look where things were on the 6th, right? So here we go. Here is south of Bakhmut, right? This is Bakhmut city center. So they're all probably running in this terrain here. So there's the 6th. So you could see this was probably in preparation for a significant push, probably supporting efforts up here, probably trying to pin Russian forces in place or stop Russian forces that would have moved south of Bakhmut and reinforced Ukrainian forces as they tried to push along this line here. That's just my thought of what this mission probably is. Again, look, they're running ops on Discord, guys. Discord. And here's the comical thing. Again, I'm going to continue to dunk on the U.S. military because they're so antiquated in their thinking. Like, U.S. military is like, well, Discord isn't secure. My brother in Christ, your information's already on Discord. You already leaked it. So you might as well enjoy it. You might as well use the best platform for sharing video, data, information, files. Why not? Why not? And if the Russians hack it, you know what you do? You just delete it and get a new one. They're like, well, what if the Russians hack the laptops? If they hack the laptops, it doesn't matter how secure your network is.
Це достатньо.
Зараз ми виявили потенційно цікаву для колег по напрямку ціль. Це танк. Ціль рухома, уразити її артилерійським вогнем буде досить важко, оскільки танк може просто покинути цю позицію. Зараз ми будемо зв'язуватися з нашими колегами з спецпідрозділу і...
Yeah. So this is interesting. Again, this is actually classically what a fister does. They look at a target, they say, what in our arsenal might be effective for this target? But what makes it different is that they are just throwing this by the way, I want to point out the browser they're using is Firefox. It's an open source browser, guys. They're throwing, they're just throwing a drone at it, or one of those. I'm trying to think of the non-demonetized word. Anyway, while I'm talking about demonetized words, and you understand that this is the edgiest combat video I can possibly show on this platform. But if you're interested in helping out the channel and supporting what I do, certainly YouTube demonetizes my videos regularly. Patreon booted me off, so I've launched combatvetnews.com. This is the site where I have, it's basically a Patreon alternative, but I've included for free all my YouTube videos, all the news stories I can't get to in my daily updates. But if you want to support what I do, become a member. This is the best way to support me, right? Barely any of this goes towards the payment processor or the website. It's all really supporting me and my team. Gets you access to exclusive videos. This is where I do the analysis of the combat footage that I can't do anywhere else. So if you want to support it, check it out. The link's up here. It's in the description. It's all over. Thank you guys so much, everybody that supports me. So they're using one of those drones that don't come back.
Вони запустили по цьому танку FPV-дрон з кумулятивним зарядом.
І що треба?
Да, що?
Да.
Also, just want to point out, guys, that circling around the city of Bakhmut, watching for enemy activity is extremely boring, extremely tedious, and extremely effective work. Like, welcome to warfare, Sometimes there is some boring jobs that are just absolutely deserve all the credit in the world. Like, really. And like, I point these things out because the combat footage that like I review, right? The GoPro footage of guys clearing trenches, that's some hardcore business. Okay. But what we forget is that there is a literal army of people who are doing routine, extremely important work. And these guys are a classic study in that. It's so funny to watch him just running maintenance on this drone. It's called actually a PMCS, Preventative Maintenance Checks and Services. This is just a process before you want to fly or operate any piece of equipment. You want to do a check to make sure that it hasn't incurred damage that's going to put you at risk or that's going to cause the equipment to fail in combat, right? You want to, if you're going to realize your drone can't fly, you don't want to throw it, you don't want to attach it to the spring and launch it into the air. You want to learn it can't fly on the ground so you can fix it and get it running. So this is actually a sign that these guys are a well-trained unit, since PMCSing things can be very tedious and feel like kind of a waste. But it's one of those things that's a waste until it's not. Interesting. This looks like an antenna to maintain the connection to the drone, or maybe to maintain the connection to Starlink. Let me know in the comments if anybody's got any insight into what this is. Maybe they'll tell us. Nope. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope you learned something. I certainly did. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.